Hello, welcome back or welcome. Today we're finally talking about the dark aesthetics Muses system that is created by Melissa, who runs the YouTube channel Silky Mochi. If you haven't heard of the channel, I'll provide the link in the description. She talks about personal style through the lens of Kitchener essences, dark aesthetics, and astrology. And it's a pretty cool channel. I highly recommend it if you, like me, are naturally drawn to the darker and alternative styles. So I've always been drawn to the darker aesthetics, even as a kid. And these days, I am feeling more and more certain about my Enneagram type being number 4. And when I think about it that way, it makes total sense. I also used to draw a lot as a kid, and I would always draw these beautiful female characters or sometimes even creatures. And thinking back, they always had some sort of a dark flair to them. I also think I sort of naturally steered away from it because it was fostering a pretty negative body image. If I think about the images or the figures or even the people that I looked up to for their dark style, they were very often associated with being underweight, having body image issues. And in that sense, I think what Melissa has created with the dark aesthetics Muses system is genius, because the inspirations are drawn from these mythical creatures or ideas, right? So they're not like concrete figures that you can picture in your head and start comparing yourself to. So let's talk about the dark Muses system in more detail today. I'll provide a brief overview as I understand and interpret the system. I'll also talk about which of the 5 main muses I'm drawn to the most and the least, and I'll share some ideas on how you might incorporate some of these inspirations into your own style. And I'm already wearing some of those ideas right now, which I'll explain a bit later on in the video. If you're familiar with the system already, I'll leave timestamps so you can skip the overview section. The next section is really for people who have never heard of the system before, or for those of you who are interested in hearing my perspective about the system. So Melissa identifies 3 main components that contribute to a dark aesthetic. The first component is the night, which has obvious associations to the color black and darkness. And as it crosses over to the nature component, there's also common motifs like the moon and the bat. My thought on this component is there's something restorative about the night, right? So I immediately think about the feelings of being calm and relaxed when I think about the night. So a sense of tranquility and serenity is there for me, like the night is never too loud. And then the second component is nature. So we're thinking in association to earthy metals and gems, spirituality, rituals. And the things that come to my mind when I think about nature is this animalistic and raw feeling, like there's something unrefined and primal about this component. And then the third component is the supernatural. So it relates to images of ghosts, mythical creatures, horror as it crosses over to the night component, and cryptids as it crosses over to the nature component. And Melissa talks about this component in relation to that unsettling feeling you get. And she really encourages you to embrace that unsettling feeling if you want to pursue a darker aesthetic and be unapologetic about it, which I couldn't agree more. Like, as long as you're not breaking the law or you're not harming anybody physically, how you choose to express yourself through your style, if that is making other people uncomfortable, I don't really think that's your problem. So based on these 3 components, there's 5 sources of inspiration or 5 main muses that you can draw inspiration from. And these muses are vampire, witch, siren, haunted doll, and dark fairy. And I'll go over each of them quickly, and I'll provide my own input and my takes on them as well. The first muse is the vampire, which is a crossover between the supernatural and the night. And the inspirations that Melissa uses are Gothic literature, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Akasha from Queen of the Damned, and the Victorian era. So there's a lot of drama and sensuality with this look. Vampires also have a connection to history, and they're known to be immortal, so the assumption is that they've collected a lot of wealth over time. So their style represents opulence, luxury, maximalist, materials like velvet and brocade, and there's an obvious association to the color red because of blood. And silhouette-wise, like I said, there's a nod to the Victorian era, so it's long, full, voluminous with a sensual touch. So my own take when it comes to the vampire as a muse is a little bit different. I immediately think about a warrior when I think vampire, and it probably has to do with the more modern pop culture influences like Underworld, Blade, Buffy. But I always associate vampires with the idea of strength and power. Like they're a lot stronger and more powerful than humans. And there's also always this idea that they are living amongst us. Think Interview with the Vampire or Twilight or Vampire Diaries. So I actually imagine a vampire to be wearing a modern look, that kind of blends in with the current environment rather than being super extravagant and having a historic look to them. So my own interpretation when it comes to a vampire style would be something masculine with a strong structure, a lot of rigidity, heavy materials like leather, and long silhouettes but with a modern look. So I immediately think about costumes from the Underworld series and the Matrix series, but I know that Melissa also uses Matrix and specifically Neo's costumes as an inspiration for a masculine way of dressing as a siren. So there's a little bit of difference in opinions there, but I'm not married to the idea, and also I don't think these are like strict rules to follow, so I think difference in opinions is allowed. And then the second muse is the witch, which is a crossover between night and nature. And the references that Melissa uses are 90s whimsigoth, the show Sabrina and the Craft, Dark Cottagecore, and Stevie Nicks. And because they're inspired by nature, there's a focus on natural fibers like linen and cotton, as well as tribute to deities. And silhouette-wise, they're also long, but more flowy than full and voluminous. I personally think that the silhouette is the most important when it comes to the witch aesthetic. Like, I immediately think of a lot of layers and cover-ups when I think about how a witch might dress. And in that sense, I'm thinking like bohemian or boho with the dark twist. So there's like a messy hair or a level of undoneness to their style as well. And I think I'm making that connection in relation to that raw and unrefined quality of the nature. The third muse is the siren, which is a crossover between supernatural and nature. And just to clarify, in this specific context, we're talking about the siren as a mythical sea creature, not a bird. So sirens are these seductive creatures of the sea. So there is an obvious oceanic influence there with the color blue and green, pearls, but more so in organic shapes, iridescence, and materials like satin that have a smooth and water-like texture. And Melissa describes this style as minimal, simple, shimmery, and there is also that undone, effortless, messy quality about them. And I think that's related to the nature as well as the water. So the silhouettes are less defined and less rigid. I'd say this is my favorite muse out of the 5, and the one that I resonate with the most in terms of style. And I'm not really surprised because minimal is one of my 3 style words, and I'm also naturally drawn to a lot of sensual styles. So when I think minimal and feminine, I think siren, and when I think minimal and masculine, I think vampire, because like I said, I associate vampires with the idea of strength and power, so I would assume their style to have a lot of structure, and also minimal because they're sort of trying to hide amongst us and carry on. The next muse is the haunted doll, which lives in the supernatural component. And Melissa describes this muse as being cute but creepy, which I think is the perfect way to explain it. So think uncanny valley theory and just that unsettling and ghostly feeling of having something as lifeless as a doll being possessed by like an evil spirit. So this style has a lot of textures going on, like laces, ribbons, bows, ruffles. The silhouettes are poofy and floating, and the makeup is very doll-like, so there's a plastic and unrealistic quality to it, exaggerated lashes, overdone blush, and very pale skin with a milky, glossy texture. I'm actually reminded of the Victorian era a lot more with the haunted doll than the vampire, because if you think about the Japanese Lolita subculture, that's directly influenced by the Victorian era and the Rococo period, but it's just not as mature or sensual because we're talking about a doll. So that's just my take on it. And then last but not least, we've got Dark Fairy as the fifth muse, which lives in the nature component. They take a lot of inspiration from nature, like floral. They're also punk inspired because of that mischievous quality that fairies are often known for. So their style is more playful and experimental, colorful. It's the most colorful out of all of the muses. And silhouette wise, it's all about short abrupt lines, cutoffs, and crops. Some of Melissa's references are Nana Asaki from the manga Nana, so obviously with that also Vivienne Westwood is an inspiration, 90s Betsy Johnson, 80s trad goth, 2000s emo, and FKA Twigs is the most recent or most modern reference. I am immediately reminded of the Gamine essence when I think Dark Fairy. I'm thinking like 60s mod with a dark twist, a short pixie cut, mini dresses, short broken lines. And I'm really glad that Nana was referenced here. I read the manga back when I was in high school, and I don't think I was a huge fan of it. I never finished it, but I remember in 2005 they came out with like a real life movie version of it, and one of my favorite musicians played the role of Nana Asaki. She's this Japanese artist called Nakashima Mika, and she was like one of my muses back in high school. My 2005 Wolf Cut was inspired by her and this other artist. So I just love her, and I was really glad that Melissa referenced the manga Nana because it evoked a sense of nostalgia for me, which is always nice. So that was a brief overview of the system as I understand and interpret it. And if I were to rank the 5 muses from the most to the least relatable or integrable into my own style, I would say Siren probably comes in first because minimal is one of my style words, and I am naturally drawn to the more sensual styles a lot of the times. And then I would say Vampire comes in next. Again, I think minimal when I think vampire, but there's this masculine component to them which I usually like playing around with a lot. And then I would say Dark Fairy comes in next. I mean, I was sold at Nana, but I also have some shorter mini dresses that I think I can use to easily make this style work for me. And I also like the punk inspired spirit, and it's probably because rebellious is my other style word. And then I would say Witch comes in next. I do love long flowy silhouettes, and I like the idea of like a dark bohemian or boho flair, but I'm generally not a fan of a lot of layers, so I feel like I'm gonna have some challenges with that. And then I'd say Haunted Doll is the least relatable muse for me because of the silhouettes, just so against what I'm usually drawn to, and I feel like I'm just allergic to cute styles in general, but I think I might be able to incorporate some makeup elements. Now comes the fun part of talking about which component from each of the muses I can see myself incorporating into my current style. And we're gonna talk about hair and makeup first because I think it is the most important. It's gonna do like 80% of the work because my closet is already full with dark colors, and I'm generally drawn to edgier styles, so I don't really think I'm gonna change how I dress drastically, but it's through hair and makeup that I'm really gonna be able to amp up that darkness. I am also on a no-buy challenge, so I'm just kind of working with what I already have in my closet. With the hair, I've got this like wet hair look that is inspired by the siren because they're creatures of the sea, and this is super easy to achieve with a little bit of hair oil. So I usually do overnight braids just to create the wavy texture, and I have a tutorial video on how I do that if you're curious. And then I applied some hair oil just all over my hair. I usually don't like wearing this much hair products, but this one I'm trying out and it's not bad. It gives the hair that wet, greasy look without the greasy and heavy feeling. So if you're interested, I'll provide a link to the product in the description. And then with the makeup that I'm wearing today, I'll pop the inspo pic up here. This is from a K-pop music video. I just like the purplish dark lipstick and the brownish grayish eyeshadow. It's not really inspired by one specific muse, but I thought it would be a good look that would generally work as a dark aesthetics look. So I'm using a lot of cool tones today, like colors I normally don't really wear since I'm warm. And I feel like that's almost more effective at creating that deadly look because the blue tones in my skin and coloring are just highlighted more with the cooler shades. I also think that bleached or lighter eyebrows, there's something unsettling about having lighter eyebrows as a dark-haired person. And my love for lighter eyebrows actually comes from the Japanese subculture Kyaru, but I do think that I can push it to the extremes for that less conventional look. I also think long individual false lashes along the lower lash line is a good idea. Again, I used to do this because I was inspired by the Kyaru subculture, but I think it's a great idea for that haunted doll / clownish makeup look. I'm also wearing a lot of silver highlighter today, and I went a bit excessive with it because I really want to create sort of that unrealistic look. And I think you can say this is inspired by the siren or the fairy or the haunted doll. Something that I'm not wearing but I think can make a big impact are colored contacts. I just can't wear colored contacts anymore because I got LASIK years ago. I have extremely dry eyes and my eyes will turn really red once I start wearing colored contacts for a period of time. So I don't wear those anymore, but I used to be obsessed with them because they make such a big impact to your overall look. Like I used to think that my makeup is not finished without contacts. Now I can't really do that anymore, but the health of my eyes is more important. So, I'll just live vicariously through other people who are able to wear them. When it comes to jewelry, I think that silver generally works better than gold in adding that darker aesthetic, just because of that feeling of coldness that silver adds. I also like oxidized silver because it adds more depth to the look. A black and silver combo can work really well, and I'm generally more comfortable with organic shapes than things with a religious theme, and that's probably the siren influence. I do think that gold can still work, especially if you use it with black, because black adds that darkness. So I've got this bracelet, which is a gold skull with a black leather around it, and I feel like the leather just helps with adding a bit more edginess to the look. So those are some things you can do with your hair, makeup, and jewelry. Like I said, I think it can really make up the majority of your look because with clothes you can easily get something that is edgy, right? Like I feel like the word edgy is a watered down description of a dark aesthetic. Like you can easily incorporate things like the color black or leather or something see-through or sheer. Those things are pretty easy to find and you can incorporate them into your wardrobe without feeling overwhelmed or feeling like you're going overboard with the dark aesthetics theme. And then like I said, you can use your hair, makeup, and jewelry to amp up that dark vibe. If you're looking for celebrity inspirations, and I know the point of the system is to step away from that and to look at sources other than celebrities, but there's just so many photos of them. And if you're somebody that might need more concrete visualization of how the dark aesthetics can be incorporated at varying levels. Like I said, for me, one of my muses is Nakashima Mika. I find that her usual style, even outside of the role of Nana, always has this dark and dramatic elements that I really like. I also think Billie Eilish is a really good example. Her style is always dark, but she's quite playful with colors, and there's a strong street and sporty influence to her style. So I think she gives a really good example of how you can still play around with colors and have these like sporty influences while maintaining an overall dark theme. Doja Cat is another good example. I know she is well known for her over-the-top red carpet looks, but outside of those events, I think her style is actually quite minimal and sensual, but she uses a lot of accessories and makeup to really amp up that dark and unsettling feeling. Megan Fox's more recent styles might be good to look at. Kate Moss and Dua Lipa are also good examples. Okay, so now, finally, I'm gonna show you some outfit ideas that incorporate the dark aesthetics vibe. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna share some of my recent outfits with you. I've been using TikTok kind of as an outfit diary these days, so I'll share some of my recent videos here. And then I'll show you how my hair and my makeup and my jewelry change can add that dark aesthetics vibes to the same outfit that I've worn in the past. The first outfit, we are gonna start with this off-shoulder top that I'm currently wearing. I've definitely worn this in my previous styling videos before. And it was so interesting to see this exact top be referenced in Melissa's Siren aesthetics video. I'll pop a photo up here for you to see. So I got this top when I was in Korea earlier this year. If anyone is interested, I'll provide the link in the description. So right now I'm wearing these khaki trousers, but I can change these into this long black maxi skirt. And I think this look kind of combines the siren and witch aesthetics. The top is giving minimal and sensual, but the long silhouette in the maxi skirt is giving more of a witch vibe, especially because the skirt has some weight to it. It's not like a satin material, so it doesn't have that like watery or figure hugging silhouette. And then I'm just gonna switch out the earrings to these big statement earrings. I think this is also giving siren with the dark bluish green color. So comparing this outfit to how I styled this shirt in a previous video with my baggy pants and boots, I think that the all black outfit, as well as the hair and the makeup that I'm wearing today, definitely adds a lot more darkness to the overall look. Now with outfit number 2, this is another recent outfit that I've worn with this black t-shirt with an open back, and I wore them with gray jeans and mesh flats. And I think that this outfit itself already has a dark flair to it, but to make it more specific to the dark Muses, I'm gonna swap out the jeans to this blue silk skirt. I actually tried dyeing this skirt from ivory to black, but it somehow turned out to be this blue color, which I actually kind of like the end result. Like, I don't mind it at all. I think it's giving siren because of the color blue, and the material is silk, which has that water-like texture. I'm also going to switch out the jewelry to pearls, again, to add more of that siren influence. And I like the silver sort of organic shaped earrings because they add a bit of an edgier feel. And then I've got 2 shoe options. I can go with the mesh flats, which I think the overall look is like a full siren aesthetic, or I can add chunky boots and a brown jacket on top, and that adds a bit of a masculine touch to the overall look, which, like I said, has that vampire influence in my mind. Now with the next 2 outfits, I actually don't think that I need to change much from the original outfits. I think the difference in the hair and makeup is enough to add a darker vibe to the looks. So with this mini dress outfit, with the brown jacket and the chunky boots, I think it's obviously giving dark fairy. And then this yellow sleeveless sweater and the black maxi skirt, again, I think this is giving dark fairy because of the colorfulness of the top. And I also think the chunky fisherman sandals kind of have this fun shape to them, and it adds a bit of playfulness to the look. But the heavy maxi skirt with the dark hair and makeup, as well as the jewelry choices, still bring the look together with an overall dark theme. Here's another outfit from one of my previous videos, which I think is already giving a lot of witch and vampire and possibly even siren. The layered lace maxi dress is definitely giving witch in my opinion, but I also think that the sheer see-through material of this dress adds a bit of a sensuality to the look, which can be interpreted as a siren influence. And then again, I'm wearing a men's leather jacket here, which adds that structure and masculinity of the vampire influence that I've described earlier. I honestly don't think that there's a lot of darkness with the change in the hair and the makeup, just because the previous look already kind of had a similar hair and makeup to what I'm wearing today. And then with the next outfit, this denim on denim combo, I'm not sure why, but it's giving witch to me, even though I'm not using any black here. And I think it has to do with the silhouette of the skirt. Like, there's definitely a little bit of heaviness added with the denim skirt and the chunkiness of the boots, and then the layer on top just adds a bit more of an unstructured or flowy vibe. And I put the hair up into this messy bun because I think that adds even more of that dark boho look that I was describing earlier as part of the witch aesthetic. The satin top underneath is adding a little bit of a siren influence to the look, but overall, I think this looks very witch to me. And maybe that's a bit of a stretch. I'm not sure, but I asked my husband and he agrees with me. I'm just gonna end the video with showing you more of my recent outfits, all of which I think already have some level of a dark flare to them, but I think the darkness definitely can be amped up with a different hair or makeup and accessories for all of these outfits. Maybe I might even change out some of the lighter colors to black or gray to amp up that darkness as well. But I hope this gives you some inspiration on how you can incorporate a darker flare into your outfits and your style. I'll see you in my next video, and until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.